Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our guest today is Art Faulkner, Director of Alabama's EMA. Also, the V-Team will take a look at what might be the last stand in the Lowell Barron-Jill Johnson case. And Mike Hubbard is spinning like a frog in a blender. Somebody push puree. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to the Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Good morning. Good morning.
Claire Austin is off today, but we have been blessed to have Jessica James with us up from Mobile. Welcome, Jessica.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we also want to wish every mother out there a happy Mother's Day, and we're so thankful that we have you. But your daughters are happy they've got you.
Absolutely.
Beautiful mother like that. How many daughters do you have?
I have 2 daughters, but I'm not a mother.
But you're not a mother, but you've made
My wife is a mother.
Your wife is a mother.
I have one furry daughter.
One furry daughter.
One furry daughter.
Well, don't let her scream you say.
And I don't want to leave my sons out. I also have 3 sons. So.
Yeah. Well, happy Mother's Day.
Absolutely.
Last year, former Senator Lowell Barron and his longtime assistant, Jill Johnson, were indicted for ethics violations and campaign violations. That case has been coming unglued. The judge ruled that they could not bring up any romantic relationship.
Let me stop you there. An alleged romantic relationship.
Right,
and I think it's important to point out that neither of these individuals were married at the time that they worked together.
Right.
And so any allegations right now are just that, an allegation.
Well, and they are. And I don't know that they matter. But the AG has said they need to introduce this alleged romantic relationship to establish motive. You take issue with that.
I do take issue with that, and it's almost like the AG has conceded that if they don't get to introduce this evidence, that it is almost fatal to their case. It's highly unusual. One of the things that has happened recently is that the AG appealed the ruling of the trial court judge to the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals. A number of those judges recused.
Right.
And so Chief Justice Roy Moore got to appoint Champ Lyons to sit in on this case. He is a former Supreme Court justice and is considered quite the legal scholar. The other thing that the Court of Criminal Appeals has done is issued an order just in the last several days that says to the AG's office, you have 14 days to tell us why this ought not to be dismissed, because this is the kind of ruling that a trial judge makes all the time in a case. It's an evidentiary matter.
When you say dismissed, it's the appeal that would be dismissed, not
That's
the
right.
case against Lowell Barron. Look,
Right.
it goes back to the romantic involvement. Is it fatal to the case? I don't know if it's fatal to the case. It sure, to me, makes the case easier if you're saying there was some sort of a circuitous route running from Lowell Barron to Jill Johnson back to Lowell Barron. If she's a romantic partner, you might trust her with $50,000 more than if she's just an employee. And I think it makes their case easier. I don't know if it's fatal to the case.
But why even bring it up? I mean, what would be the point if it wasn't fatal to the case? Why even mention it to begin with?
One of the other big issues in the case is the use of the word ordinary in the statute, and whether or not this, the payment of the win bonus is how the Barron camp has characterized it, whether the payment of the win bonus is considered an ordinary expenditure from a campaign. That's another thing that the AG's office takes issue with, is whether or not the judge has made the right ruling on waiting to trial before he rules on that particular evidentiary issue.
Well, and I think that's a problem there, because these win bonuses are very, very commonly given out. Now, whether they're legal or not, who knows? I don't know whether they're legal or not, but they get handed out all.
They're commonly given out. They're not very commonly handed right back to the candidate.
Well, that's true, and not at the same city.
Right.
But, I mean, she's answered that, and that's all out there.
Correct.
I wish them all the best. They're all, you know, out there. They've been accused. Jill Johnson has suffered greatly over this incident. So we'll just see how it plays out. Bob Riley's back in the news this week. His SGO that got started under the Alabama Accountability Act has been targeting non-failing schools. The bill was supposed to help kids in failing schools, but Bob's got a thing where he wants to give away money to everybody.
Well, and that was the big selling point, right? We're going to take kids that are trapped in a failing school and give them options. And that's what everybody was sold on. That's what everybody was so excited about. Now we find out 12 months later that the Accountability Act wasn't about failing schools at all. It was about giving public school money to private schools, even in non-failing school systems, and in non-failing school districts, and in areas where the entire district doesn't have a single failing school.
Here's one of the interesting things. When I went back and I looked at the list that's on the Department of Finance website that shows the participating non-public schools as of May 2nd. If you look in Birmingham, there are 13 participating schools, all but one is a religious school. If you look at Huntsville, there are 10 participating schools, all but 3 are religious schools. And in Montgomery County, you have 12 participating schools and all but 3 are religious schools. And interesting, one of the ones on this list is Sylvan Learning Center, which I thought was like an after-school homework kind of program. And I pass by it every day to pick up my daughters from school, and there's a sign in front of it that has the logo for the Alabama, Opportunity Scholarship, which is the Bob Riley Fund.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, this thing has a potential to make millions and millions of dollars for the former governor and his partners. I mean, he says he's not making any money at it, but if he's not, why not just get out? He's caused controversy. Just quit, Bob. Just step aside.
Well, what is it, a 5% administrative fee? I mean, that just kind of comes in, reminds me of just typical grants, whether it be state grants or federal grants. There's usually an administrative fee that goes to the administrator of the grant, from 5 to 8%. And so there's obviously money to be made, and that was obviously also the reason why they wanted to put a cap, or take the cap off of how much you could contribute each year to the organization.
And here's where the proof is going to be in the pudding. On June 1st, the Revenue Department is requiring all of the 13 SGOs that have been approved to submit an annual report. And on those annual reports, they have to submit things like copies of their Form 990s, their financial information report that are prepared by a CPA. And so I think once we get those pieces of information, then we can really evaluate, where's the money coming from, where's it going, and who's making a profit, if any, off of this particular scholarship.
But we get sidetracked in what's going on in your original point. Now money is going to school districts where there are no failing schools.
Right.
The public schools are doing their job, they're serving their purpose in these areas, and Bob Riley's group wants to come in and take money out of that school district that's already been taken out, frankly, and not send it over to a failing school district, but spend it within that district in private schools where there are no failing public schools.
Right. We've got about 45 seconds. I know this is something that you're really aware of, and this is that Common Core issue. Common Core PAC has given a lot of money to candidates. In about 30 seconds, can you give us, how is this Common Core going to affect races?
I think it's going to affect a lot of races this year. I think this is the number one reason why so many of the incumbents, the establishment incumbents, have conservative Tea Party candidates running against them in the state house elections this year, is because when Senator Del Marsh told the public that he wouldn't even bring the Common Core issue to the floor for a vote, it outraged a lot of parents that want to actually have the choice and the say in whether or not their children are taking these assessments that are coming down from what is seen as the federal government, even though it wasn't actually created by the federal government. It's being pushed by the federal government, and it's been attached to Race to the Top grant funding. So I think this is going to be a very big issue this year. It's so big that we actually have PAC that's dedicated to stopping Common Core, that's giving money to these candidates.
We're going to have to hold it at there. Common Core or Rotten Core, we don't know. You're watching The V. Our guest will be Art Faulkner from the EMA. We'll be right back.
The V is sponsored by Jonathan Barbie for Public Service Commissioner and MediaWorks Communications Video Production Services for all your video production needs.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek, Wetumpka. The perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek, Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
I've directed the Environmental Protection Agency to set new standards that put an end to the limitless dumping of carbon pollution from our power plants.
Let's face it, we're all tired of Obama's liberal agenda. Now he's threatening to shut down Alabama coal plants and raise our utility rates. I'm Jonathan Barbie, and I will stand up to Obama's costly energy plan, and I will fight to keep Alabama jobs. I'm asking for your vote on June the 3rd. Stand with Barbie, and together, let's keep Alabama working.
Welcome back to the V. Our guest today is Art Faulkner, the director of the Alabama EMA. Director Faulkner, welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Been a very, very busy couple of weeks for everyone at the EMA. I know you've had a lot on your plate. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened and how it happened and what's going on still?
Well, you know, we had a series of storms that moved into the state starting on the 28th, and then a huge amount of rain that fell on the Gulf Coast that Tuesday night. And unfortunately, we sustained a pretty good bit of damage, and we had a lot of our citizens that received damage from those. And the governor very quickly made a request to the president to declare certain portions of the state of Alabama for individual assistance, and we're still looking at public assistance to our governments. And fortunately, the president has granted that, and we've got some other additional counties that we're still looking at this week and have made additional requests. So we're just trying to meet the immediate needs of our citizens.
One of the things that we've seen in some of the media is that they sort of chided the governor on the request for assistance from the federal government. But he first declared a state of emergency. There's a real reason why he does that, and it's not about the money, is it?
No, it's not. Issuing the state of emergency in the state of Alabama puts into place the Alabama Emergency Management Act that was passed in the legislature in the 50s, and it gives the governor the powers to do what is necessary to implement and have ready to put into place everything that's needed when these storms do hit. So it's a lot of preparedness measures that go into place. It also enables the governor to place the Alabama National Guard on standby and then very quickly be able to mobilize them if needed, which he did last week.
One of the things, and you told me this when we spoke earlier in the week, is that certain regular rules or laws are waived during a state of emergency, allowing materials and food and that sort of thing to travel more freely. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. There are laws that govern all aspects of life from the federal government that are in place for safety and other things. One of those is an hour limit on the commercial drivers that drive and bring those goods and services throughout the state of Alabama, and also our electrical company crews that are driving those big trucks fall under those federal motor carrier safety laws. And so what that enables the governor to do is put into place a way to be able to mobilize them where certain hours that normally would be impacted and would be a limit on them, to be able to waive those to get those people in place to be able to respond quickly.
A lot of people wonder why things take as long as they do with FEMA. Could you help our audience understand that?
Well, I think the people in Alabama, unfortunately, have had some very catastrophic events in the last several years, and so those types of events are much quicker when we know that the requirements have been met, the thresholds have been met. When we have a situation like we had last week, we have to go in and make sure that all areas of the state where the damage, even if it was your house, and that's as severe as it can be, it was sporadic throughout the state, and so we have to look at each one of those. It takes us a little bit of time, and we have to gather all of the information to meet the requirements to get federal assistance.
So it's just a matter of that it's spread out all over the state and not concentrated in one area, and that's the basic problem.
Well, it is, and you know, it's a difference when you've got thousands and thousands of homes destroyed versus hundreds of homes destroyed.
But as you said, if it's your house, it's catastrophic.
It's as bad as it gets, and people that lost loved ones, that's the worst thing that can happen. But what we do is we don't just look at FEMA assistance. The governor sends teams in to look at all types of needs that need to be met and making sure that we're identifying those to where if areas do not qualify for that government assistance from FEMA, that we can still, the state of Alabama is going to still be here. And so we've got to identify what other types of assistance can be provided to them.
What are some of those programs that might be available to folks?
Well, on the government side, we also have the Small Business Administration in here looking at being able to provide low-interest loans to not only businesses but residents. And in places even where FEMA is not able to provide assistance, in a lot of cases they can provide those low-interest loans. And after the April 27, 2011 storms, they provided low-interest loans to over 100,000 of our citizens throughout the state. So that's available, but then we have to also look at our volunteer organizations that are active in disaster response and recovery. And so a lot of times those religious organizations or those charitable organizations, such as the American Red Cross and others, can do so much more than what the government can do,
Right.
and a lot of times not with those regulations. And so we look at that holistic approach to be able to provide whatever assistance possible.
We've got about 45 seconds left. You and the governor were going in different directions, I understand, a lot of the time. This governor has done a great job at being on the spot during these disasters. I know he speaks very highly of you. Tell us about what he's like when these things happen.
Well, I think that the governor's life experience has helped him be able to manage these types of situations. Being a doctor, being in the military, being in these types of situations. And what he does is he's very concise about what he wants done. Number one is the individuals, making sure they're taken care of, and he instructs you on what he wants you to do and lets you go out there and do it.
We sure appreciate everything you do and everything the governor does. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Bill.
Our guest has been Art Faulkner, Alabama's EMA Director. You're watching The V. We'll be right back.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
I've directed the Environmental Protection Agency to set new standards that put an end to the limitless dumping of carbon pollution from our power plants.
Let's face it, we're all tired of Obama's liberal agenda. Now he's threatening to shut down Alabama coal plants and raise our utility rates. I'm Jonathan Barbie, and I will stand up to Obama's costly energy plan, and I will fight to keep Alabama jobs. I'm asking for your vote on June the 3rd. Stand with Barbie, and together, let's keep Alabama working.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
If you like Obamacare, you will love Common Core. Common Core is not just about standardizing curriculum and testing. It's about nationalizing education to fit Obama's standards. This is a bad plan. Our kids deserve better. To find out more about this rotten Common Core plan, visit alabamalimitedgovernment.com. Let's tell Washington to keep their hands off our children.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You know, Art Faulkner, does not have an easy job.
No, he surely doesn't.
Oh,
This
busy job.
been terrible what's going on. Y'all had a lot of flooding down.
We did. We had an incredible amount of flooding, and I was actually really impressed to see with the first round of the governor asking for FEMA assistance. He's actually included, the first round didn't include Mobile County, but this last round past this week has included Mobile County as well. So I was really glad to see that.
The governor really steps up in these times, doesn't he, Barry?
Well, this is his bread and butter. I mean, this is where he, won over the hearts and minds of most Alabamians after a pretty bitter, hard-fought election in 2010. They had the tornadoes early 2011, and he shined. I mean, that was his moment.
Well, this week, somebody who doesn't shine so well lately, Speaker of the House Mike Hubbard met with AL.com and spun a web. I'm telling you, when he got through the spin cycle, just didn't want to stop. Jack, did it help him or hurt him?
I really don't know. I mean, either you trust Mike, you don't, and I basically don't. And I'll just say that most people are starting to not trust him. And I think that he probably set some very distinct parameters before he agreed to sit down with a reporter, where he sat there and played the victim card. Oh, poor me. Everybody's against me. Everybody's attacking me. Nobody's attacked him yet. And that's just to try to win over public sympathy that, he's the downtrodden poor guy that everybody's going after. But they're going after him for a reason.
Did you get to read that interview?
I did. But, from my point of view and the way I see it, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. So I think he's kind of staying on that same vein, especially with it being high re-election season for him. And he's drawn an opponent who has been receiving money from the Stop Common Core PAC as well. So, he's got some things, out there, and they're all gunning for him, but at the same time, as you mentioned, being a spin master, that's what he's become really good at. So, and he's innocent in the eyes of the people.
Well, it's almost like we have a complicit media, though. They don't ask him the tough questions.
Right.
Yeah, I was disappointed Archibald didn't ask him about the $150,000 in legal fees. He's paid $150,000 in what can only be surmised as criminal defense legal fees out of his campaign account.
PAC.
Archibald has him there and doesn't ask him about it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, most of the media is easy on him. I said that this week that I thought he had taken bribes and that I thought he was a crook, so I'm not real easy on him.
Well, let me say this.
Well, you never have been, Bill.
In our business, we track polls a lot all over the state. We look at hundreds of polls every week. And we've been monitoring what's going on over in Lee County on almost a day-by-day basis, certainly a week-by-week basis. Mike Hubbard cannot get over about 46 to 48% in his race. And no matter how hard he slanders and lies about his opponent, and that's what they are, saying that he supports Obama and this kind of, that's just foolishness and lies. He can't get his opponent under about 30, 32%. And so that race is tight, tighter than most people would probably anticipate. And no matter how much Mike Hubbard throws, and Mike Hubbard has really not been attacked at all, period. He keeps saying he's being attacked. I think there was one attack commercial that ran 8 weeks ago. It ran for about a week, and after that, it was off the air. And so, I'm not sure exactly what his strategy is here. He seems sort of all over the map, and he can play the victim card, but it's kind of falling flat right now. It's not working.
Well, Mike's used to being the puncher. He's not used to taking a punch. I mean, that's a different animal. I want to switch subjects here to Barry Moore, whose attorney, former Lieutenant Governor, Democrat, Bill Baxley, says he spoke the truth, or it was materially true. What does that even mean?
Is that like being somewhat pregnant?
I guess it does. I mean, can you somewhat lie to a grand jury? I mean, is that possible, Jessica?
I mean, if it's materially true, isn't it true? I mean, does the material make difference from the air?
The Democrats in '94, when they didn't win the Chief Justice race, tried to have illegal absentee ballots counted, saying that people that only had one witness or didn't have the notary seal affixed were in substantial compliance. Still against the law.
Yeah, I mean, can you tell a little lie to a grand jury?
I don't know. I've been practicing law about a decade. I don't know much about material truth, though. That's not something we come across in our practice.
No, not or in politics.
Yeah. But I mean, look, the reality is the tapes don't lie. The tapes say what they say. He was conveying a threat that he said came from the speaker. The speaker denies he made the threat. And so there's the distinction. But the question put to him was not, did the speaker make the threat? It was, did you tell your opponent the speaker made the threat?
Right.
On the tape, it's plain as day. Barry Moore told Josh Pipkin that the speaker was going to kill jobs in the junior college expansion if Josh Pipkin ran for election.
Right.
He went under oath and lied about it.
Right. Well, and that's the problem. It's the lie, it's the cover-up. That's usually what gets folks.
And interestingly, he's gotten $50,000 in the last 6 weeks from Bob Riley's PAC and from Mike Hubbard's Storm PAC. 50 grand. which is more than they've given anybody else. And some have suggested that that's Bill Baxley's retainer, but you know,
Well,
are they buying silence or buying?
Would that go again with, same as Speaker Hubbard paying for his legal fees out of a campaign fund? Would that not be his, if that was the case, and paying for Baxley's retainer? Would
Well,
that
somebody
not
ought
be
to look into that,
the
because that
exact
is
same
clearly
thing?
not what the Attorney General's opinion said. You
No.
cannot use it unless
Unless
it's
you've
to
been
pursue him of a criminal indictment, and Barry has been criminally indicted.
So I guess he could
He
use it.
could.
Barry
use
could legally do it. Mike, I think again, I keep saying this, and as long as they're using the campaign money to pay a lawyer, I will say it has to be the case. Mike Hubbard has already been indicted. That has to be true, or else he's illegally paying his lawyers out of his campaign fund. There is no third option.
Well, we got about a minute and a half here, and I think that's a huge issue. But I also think it's a huge issue that a year ago, Mike Hubbard stood before the young Republicans of Birmingham and said he had $10 million in hand for incumbent protection. Now, right now, the Riley PAC and the Storm PAC, as you mentioned, only have a little more than $1 million left. Jessica, how much incumbent protection can you buy for $1 million?
Certainly not as much as you could with $10 million,
Right.
that's for sure. I mean, with the high cost of campaigns, which I would know from personal experience,
Right.
$1 million won't get you very far, especially when you have so many incumbents that you're trying to support. $1 million is just not going to go very far.
Well, and they weren't counting on getting all these challengers. When they moved the qualifying date up to February the 4th or 7th, whatever it was, they thought they could keep people at bay, but
Right.
it just stirred people up to go find candidates
It
to run
really
against
did.
them. And
It really did.
they've got some races they weren't interested in playing in that they have to.
Well, with this loss of funding, I mean, we've seen it. Storm PAC went for 4 months without a single dime coming in, and now it just got like $8,000 or $9,000 last month. This is killing them, isn't it, Barry?
It is. I mean, $1 million, to go back to Jessica's point, $1 million does not go very far statewide. Try to run a statewide campaign on $1 million bucks. That's essentially what
do
you're
it.
trying to do.
Fundraiser, or had a fundraiser Friday. I don't know what he brought in, but
Yeah, I don't know either.
Well, we're going to have to leave it at that. You've been watching The Voice of Alabama Politics. You can catch us every day at alreporter.com and every Sunday at your ABC affiliates throughout the state. Thank you for watching.